This podcast is brought to you by Amusement Warehouse Magazine, the industry's largest trade publication. We cover amusement parks, carnivals, fairs, festivals, history, safety columns. We really got it all when it comes to the amusement business. Only remaining print publication in the amusement industry on a regular basis. So if you're interested in what the amusement industry has to offer, subscribe today. You can subscribe by logging on to amusementwarehouse.com, carnivalwarehouse.com, or amusementparkwarehouse.com. Welcome to another edition of the Amusement Warehouse Podcast. Today, from the West somewhere,
yes,
we have Pete Downs of Waterloo Tent. What is it?
Tent and Tarp Company. Let's go with that. It's got a lot of names.
Is that the? Yeah, exactly. You're very like the CIA. You have all these subsidiary companies there.
Yeah, the parent company.
I feel like we did this before.
Tent and Tarp Company.
I feel like we just did this.
Yeah, it seems like it. Someone forgot.
We had a little technical glitch with our first interview with Pete, and he's back.
Somebody didn't like what I said, I guess.
You're great. Pete's been a big friend of the podcast. He has makes his own line of clothing.
Yeah, it's.
You made a lot of money off that. Has that been as big as the canvas business?
This has been 100% loss, and it's not a business you want to get into. But I do have to show your audience because I was a fan and are a fan of the podcast. And when I watched you for the couple of years now, you've been doing this. I'm like, it looks like Joe Rogan sitting back there. This is like wow. The Ron Weber experience. You get to kind of come in, sit down, have a chat, and the variety of the people that you have on here, you can tell some of them are nervous or whatever, and are thinking, man, an hour, I don't have an hour worth of anything. And at the end of the hour, they're like, wow, that went by already. But yeah, let me show you. I'll bring that T-shirt up. I presented you with one of these at the IAFA show. We made a total of 6 of them, I think. But anyway.
All in super large sizes.
There's the scoop on it. Yes, absolutely. I got to do it that way. So yeah, there it is. The Ron Weber experience. It's total knockoff of Joe Rogan. And I'm just sure, because I know Joe's a fan, he'll probably catch this podcast and want to come after us. And that would be fun. So.
And how much are those in the Waterloo catalog?
You can order those.
Separate business?
What's that?
Or is that a separate business?
No, it's. I just did it for the hell of it. Because
can they get that on their canvas?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that could definitely be printed on canvas, but there's a few legalities we'd have to work through first. There's always a regulation, no matter what.
Yeah, it's funny you said about the talking for an hour and people think they can't. And it's, for me too, it's been like, oh, this will be easy, the hour, or this will be, or they say, oh, it's going to be tough, but usually it's kind of the opposite. Like sometimes I think people that'll be super chatty kind of got to, pull things out of them to get them comfortable first. And then people that you think like, there's no way I can get through an hour. It's all of a sudden it's over and you're like still talking as things go. So it's.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And the industry is amazing because it really comes down to a bunch of family businesses. And when you have that kind of an industry collectively, there's going to be a lot of stories, and it's interesting how everybody kind of comes to fruition with their business and how did we start? How did we get into it? And where are you going from here kind of thing. And for me, it's just amazing to hear a lot of the stories of how people have kind of come in and gotten into it. It's cool.
I guess I only interviewed the people that are successful in a way, right?
Yeah.
I guess you can go through history and find out the ones that went out of business, like a Bob's Tent Company, and say, oh, Bob, yeah, he made 3 of them. They didn't fit right. And he's out. I guess the story would be totally different. But, the people that survive are obviously doing the right thing or somehow survive.
You have to stay connected to your customer because that's your educator. In business, you're always paying what I call business tuition. It's like when you go to college for your education, you're going to pay for it. If you want to get into business and own a business, you're going to pay for it. And you have to be willing to take those losses and educate yourself from them so that they don't become failures. And there have been a great many teachers in this industry for Waterloo Tent from the start. A lot of the designs and the looks you see, you think, oh man, that's really creative. Pete Downs and his crew must have quite a mind, but it comes from the customers, a great deal of it. You know, we're always being challenged, and more than not, there are some customers that'll challenge us a little more, but you really have to stay in connection with that customer.
Huh. That's true too of rides. You think of like Chance when they made the giant wheel and the Floyds brought them the plans. At least that's how the story goes. You know, I think a lot of that in this industry comes from that, where it's not necessarily the company made it happen and they probably put a lot of input into it, but you know, a lot of times the customer will come with the idea, I guess is what you're saying. That
Yeah, we have a large banner hanging in our shop, and it simply says, we turn what if into wow. And that what if is what's coming down from the customers. You know, it's like, hey, just as an example, maybe when Frank Zajac calls and says, you know, I want to retheme the Florida State Fair next year.
By the way, it's December and you have to get this all to me by February or something.
Yeah, it was about that close. And you're looking at it going, okay, well, there's no chance in heck. But this one especially was challenging because it's all independent. You know, it's a Wade Shows unit, but he's got several units working with him. And then there's a lot of independent concessionaires with games and everything. So we've got to contact everybody to get measurements, to get things right, because we want it fit and we don't want anything out of place come that opening day. And that was the super challenge. And then, you know, that morning we're at Gibtown and I get a call from Frank and I'm like, yeah, here it comes. And he says, I don't know how long your arms are, buddy, but I just came off of the lot inspecting it this morning before opening. And he goes, everything is beautiful. It fits. It looks nice. It's refreshed. He goes, you need to take that arm and reach around and give yourself a pat on the back for that. And so those are the kind of things, you know, that give you that boost. But there have been several of those types of challenges along the way, no doubt, and more to come.
And that video you made was we ran it on Carnival Warehouse on the that little video that opens things up when you first log onto the site. But I think you had the first video, real video ad, sort of kind of about the experience of making all that canvas for the Florida State Fair. That was a big, huge undertaking. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, enough fabric to cover several football fields, and you just think about coordinating that with everybody and coordinating it within the production area. And you know, this one goes to this person, this one goes to this person, and well, they're the same thing. No, they're not. There's little things that one concessionaire might have that another one doesn't. And so, you know, it was a super challenge, but we were able to pull it off and have it come out great. But that was probably one of the greatest challenges because it was an independent midway and independent pretty much the whole way through. So that one was a little trickier, but I think back to the early days when Ray Kamek Shows wanted to retheme their show, and it was the same thing. It was like it was probably a September conversation for a February timeframe, and Joe B and I had gone out there, or maybe we should backtrack and maybe how did I get into this, you know, and how did I end up here?
I was gonna do that, but go ahead and finish that story because people are probably like, okay, tell me.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because when I think when you hit your 60s and then into your mid 60s and beyond, you start to look back, you start to do a little introspection and like, how'd I end up here? what in my life drove me here, and that was kind of an interesting look back. I was working for Nestle Food Company. My wife was working for Colgate-Palmolive Company. So we called on retail grocery. I had a sales team of about 15 to 20 people throughout the Midwest. And then I called on a couple of grocery wholesalers in the Midwest. And we knew, based on the industry, that we were going to lose our jobs, that we could just see it coming. From the East Coast and West Coast, they were closing down regional offices as things came together. And so we're like, yeah. And she goes, I think I'm probably going to be the first. And we're like, well, let's plan on it. Let's pay down the house, get all this stuff taken care of so we can take lesser paying jobs if we have to, because we liked it where we're at. So we did. And then I was the first to lose my job. And for me, it was go to Chicago or Denver, but you're going to be the low guy on the totem pole there in those districts. And they're still not done closing down districts. So I was like, nah, I'll stick it out here. Well, Joe B had purchased Waterloo Tent like 5 years earlier. And so he had 4 partners that were involved with him. One was an engineer at John Deere and a couple of attorneys, and then a local businessman that had a restaurant chain. And so the 4 of them bought out Vern Ryder, who had it for many, many years, and decided to move forward with it that way. Well, I knew Joe. Joe was my brother's best man at his wedding. Mm. So I knew who Joe B was. And he said, hey, man, if you can figure out the Pythagorean theorem, you can come work for us. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. He goes, you got to know how to measure a pie for a carnival ride or a corner pie of a trailer. If you can figure that out, I'm like, okay. So I came in there. I thought I'd be there maybe 3 months or so, but it's easier to find a job when you have one. So I was like, yeah, I'll come in, and holy cow. Once you get into this industry, it kind of grabs you, and I know everybody says it, but it does grab you. And, I have 100% likened it to the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. You can't leave this industry. And even myself, as I now start to look at retirement and that kind of thing, I'm like, yeah, I'll be in the background, but I won't be in the foreground. But you can't leave it. It's just an industry of family businesses, small businesses trying to survive, trying to make it. And when things are great, that's great. And when things are bad, when you spread the bad out amongst the family, you seem to survive it okay. Corporation won't survive a bad time, but family businesses will survive because they're like, you know what? Peanut butter and jelly. Remember how good that was?
That's right. We'll sacrifice a little.
Bologna sandwiches? Yeah. So.
And at that time, Waterloo was already servicing the amusement industry pretty much. I mean, even before Joe bought it, was it?
Yeah.
And how did it get started? The whole.
Well, I read an article in the local paper, and Vern Ryder was talking about it. He said, yeah, we've kind of started up this piece of it with some amusement businesses and canvas. But he goes, I don't see a future in it. And how is that? Yeah, and it's all it is. So what happened was a couple of young cowboys come rolling into town one day, and they've got I believe it was a merry-go-round top that needed repair. And they brought it into Waterloo Tent, and Vern says, what is this? And they're like, that's a amusement ride top for a carousel, and we need this repaired. And so Vern said, oh, yeah, I think we can do it. And he took a look at it, repaired it for him. And then he's like, I think we can make these things. What do you guys do? How's this industry work? And that kind of thing. Well, they didn't want to clue him in on a whole lot of it, but they basically started him in the right direction. And those 2 guys that came rolling into town, Vern told me the story, and he said, they're driving a convertible. 2 young, smart aleck kids, Dale Merriam and Butch Butler.
Oh, no way.
the two of those guys were together. They must have been working the same show. I don't know, honestly, what the connection was there, but there was. And he says, yeah, it was those two guys came into the shop. And he goes, man, these guys are dressed, looking good, looking sharp. They're hauling around this dirty ass piece of canvas. And here we go. So here's where it started. And then Vern took it further and then started contacting the original equipment manufacturers. So he went to the Chances and the Wisdoms of the world and the Majestics and Bat Tech and everybody, and started saying, hey, you need somebody to make your canvas for you. We can do it. And so he would work off of drawings primarily. But then he didn't like the drawings. He's like, I got to measure it for myself. He said, if I measure it and it's wrong, then it's my fault. If I send it to you and it's wrong, it's your fault if we just work off a drawing. So that involved a lot of trips to a lot of the different manufacturers to measure the ride once it completed, and then make sure everything fit that way. So that part of the business grew too, like gangbusters. And when I came on board in 1998, Anchor was huge in the industry. Anchor Industries was the bomb, and they had the ride business, they had the concession business, they had games, they had everything. And we were basically the little guy competing, and everybody was making stripes. And so I was like, okay, well, so that's cool. You know what we did? We went from a 30-inch stripe to a 15-inch stripe. Oh yeah, now it's multiple stripes. This is a lot cooler. Now we're going to capture the industry, and it's not something somebody else couldn't do. So it basically became people were just shopping price. And I said, if we continue down this path of just fighting price, no one's going to win. We're going to drag this thing down, and no one's going to make money on it. And we won't be fair to our employees and the industry itself, because somebody's going to end up going away. And so I had a gal that was in our production facility, and she was the welding supervisor, and by welding, I mean, we're taking two pieces of vinyl, laying them on top of each other, and it's a radio frequency welding machine that comes down and actually seals them. And it meshes the two, it feathers the two pieces together, and that's the strongest bond of the fabric. I said, can we do something besides stripes? Can we create a pattern? And she said, well, I don't know. We've never tried it. And I said, well, let's give it a shot just to see if we can come up with something. So my drawing program at the time was the Microsoft Word. You can still use it today. The original confetti design I drew out of Microsoft Word. And all I did was I drew a big triangle to represent a pie. And then I drew a square piece of confetti. And if I turn it at an angle, it's a diamond. So I got two pieces, one cut. And then I did a little squiggle thing that when you go into Microsoft Word and you do your drop-down menus, you'll find this little squiggle piece that sits in there. And that's all I did. And then
Microsoft Word.
And a star. Yeah. So it was a piece of paper I hung out, took it out to the shop.
I noticed on your company website that all the bios just have stick figures too. Did you draw those?
Yeah. You know it. Yeah, that's as good as it gets. I'll tell you how sophomoric it was. We took that, she created it, but she was like, it takes a lot of labor, because we're not just doing a straight weld. We're having to do this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out maybe dyes or something, that we can work into it. So we started farting around with it. And we took our first confetti top to IAPA in 1999. So we went to IAPA in 1999 with a confetti top, and it was all the rage. I mean, everybody's like, whoa, what is this? Competitors over here with stripes, and you're over here with what? But it was almost twice as much in terms of pricing. And so there was going to be a sticker shock. And I remember we had Steve and Julie Brodsky were looking at it, and Steve's side of his brain is going, yeah, but honey, I can buy 2 of these over there for 1 of these. And she goes like, but look how much work goes into this. And this is a work of art. They had to cut holes. They had to put this over it so it's on the underside and the top side. She goes, if you're walking down a Midway, where are you going to stop? Are you going to stop at that, or are you going to stop at this? So Flash was cash, and all of a sudden the tops became part of the Flash, and they were one of the first to purchase one. Dale Nagus was another one that came in, and Joey Fowler, naturally, he helped us create a lot of things, and a lot of designs and stuff. So it kind of started to blow up from there. So again, we just tried, what if we try this? And there's a flip side to what if. It's like, oh, what the hell? What do we just do? But most of it works out in the wow factor. So that was certainly the wow factor. And the confetti is still one of our most popular designs today.
I think it was Conklin around that time had, like, each concessionaire had their own little distinctive pattern. I think they called it like the Wizard of Oz or something like that. That was their idea, was to have everything look a little different, and it was pretty neat. But they were one of the first ones I remember to have completely wild, different stuff.
Did you say Conklin?
Conklin.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had a picture on the back of my desk of Frank Conklin and B. Nagus, and I kept it there because that was totally an inspiration. I was like, wow, look what's going on in Canada. These guys have got some really cool looking concepts and ideas when it comes to canvas, And I said, I know we can do that because we've done it. But yeah,
everybody's having matching canvas. That was the thing, is to make everything look the same. Whereas Conklin went the other way. Everybody had whatever, their own diverse look, and it was like it was supposed to be like a magical mystery tour through the Midway there. It was pretty neat. Really was.
And yet it all came together.
Yeah, it did.
Yep. We took that concept into North American Midway. We did that as well. We had like 5 or 6 different designs that the concessionaires could choose from. And, so in that case, it was like a lot of different designs. Also allow them that opportunity to pull out because they're not maybe running with a show for the entire season. They need to set up somewhere else. And so it wasn't such a distraction to have this design show up over here. Now there were the shows out there that maintained their own colors and their own design, one design only. But primarily those were the shows that had I'd say good controls or good systems in place for their concessionaires and the games people and the ride people, so they could actually operate with under one color, one design, that kind of thing. So we worked it back and forth a little bit, but it really panned out. But yeah, it all goes back to what Vern described as these 2 knuckleheads that came into Waterloo Tent one day. And man, where it went from there is amazing.
Merriam and Butler.
Yeah. And
together, which is weird. And shopping around for canvas, 2 show owners, driving in their car looking for a canvas place. But it's funny because so many of those relationships that shows have on the road with manufacturers and suppliers, whether it's a hydraulic company or whoever else, a lot of them just find it by, like what you're describing. They get a problem, drive around or talk to people on the committee or people in town and find a really good machine shop or a really good whatever, and wind up getting all their stuff for the year sometimes, like, because the guy's so good at what he does, whatever it might be, that they call back to whatever, whatever Kansas, and it's the best place in the nation to do whatever, and they constantly send their stuff there because it's like finding a nugget, a nugget of gold somewhere.
Yeah, because there were no cell phones. I mean, they had to pick up a phone book. Yeah. Or it had to be word of mouth, and so they had to really take time to, it wasn't a quick flick on, Google. They had to research it a little bit and then you develop that relationship, and then there's that trust that has to come with it, and for us, it was always about, the customer isn't always right, but don't argue with them. Just fix it, ask the question, what do we need to do to satisfy you? How do you see it working out? And then that's where we make that move. And again, it's going back to that tuition that you pay. You have to pay it. It's part of being a member of the club, if you will. So we were always very attentive to the customers, but it was that. It was just, again, what if we try this and wow, here we go, that kind of thing. So it was good. It was a good start. Good start.
Is there a reason that both companies were in Iowa?
Is there a reason what?
Both tent companies were in Iowa. Both big tent companies were in Iowa.
Anchor was in Indiana.
Oh, they were in Indiana. I thought they were in.
No,
oh,
Anchor.
sorry. Okay.
No. Again, I don't know what the connection or how Anchor began with it. But in terms of our processes, we were always looking to be different than the competition. One thing I learned early on was you need to create your point of difference. If you want to stand out, there's a lot of canvas companies out there. What's going to make yours better or special or unique that someone's going to want to actually come and buy your canvas? So we always look for a point of difference, and that's probably part of my upbringing, being 1 out of 9 kids. It's like, well, hell, I'm just 1 out of 9. Come on. How do I get their attention?
I need my unique selling point.
Maybe that was it. You wanted their attention, and you didn't want to let them down. And that might be something missing in today's society. But you never wanted to let your parents down. If nothing else, you always wanted to make sure that you were in good standing there, because family was important, and that kind of thing. But
you probably had to do something different to stand out, right? Because if you do the same thing as your brothers and sisters,
exactly, you had to.
Pete does it
or
a little
you weren't
different.
Going to get fed. They wouldn't recognize you at the table and go, "Who's this kid? How many do we have?"
Is everybody eating? Well, I think that's the thing with a lot. Like you said, there's a lot of canvas companies, but they just love to make a white tent, in a certain size and ship it out because it's easier. I guess it's a lot easier, I would imagine. And
yeah, that is the truth. I visited Anchor at one time, and we never saw the carnival production side of things. We only saw the white tent side of things, and they build pieces of the tent and then they rack them. They store them in racks, and then when somebody orders a big tent, they just take the big pieces and they do a final weld and sew. So it's quicker to get product out the door doing it that way, which was a great way if you're doing white. Well, we couldn't compete. We're a small shop compared to that, and we couldn't compete with the likes of the big white tents. We still sell a lot of them. And it irritates me when I see them on the floor, because I said, this should all be, I want show canvas out here, show canvas, because that's the market. Those are the people that brought us to the dance, and those are the people we're dancing with. So let's, I don't want to see white, because we're competing in price probably somewhere, and it's never a good ending. So
no, can't wait.
So we don't do mass production, but we're a great custom shop. It's just things have definitely changed over the years. I'd say ever since COVID, really. Things have changed where it is, we've almost fallen into that. I'd call it the anchor syndrome. And what happened with us is we became really good at joints, center joints and lineups and trailer canvas. We were shining, man. We had all the business when it was coming to that, because people wanted the patterns. They wanted to see the patterns, and we could design and draw and produce quicker than Anchor could get a quote out the door. And that was the amazing piece of it. But show owners see it and they're like, man, these guys are showing us up. My rides don't look as good as the joints, you know? And so we need Waterloo doing our ride canvas. Well, up to that point, primarily Anchor was doing everybody's ride canvas. And they were set up to do the big pieces, but usually they're solid color tops, or there'll be 60-inch stripes, you know, that kind of thing. But when the show owners started coming to us, they were like, well, I want to do that design. You know, I want to have this design and we want to make it this way and that way. And in a custom shop, you can do it. But what happened then with Anchor was, you know, they were like, you know, the margins aren't that great in ride canvas because it is grueling. It is very labor intensive. I tell you what, then they just decided to get out of it. Now, that was a shock to the industry. It was not good at all, and it wasn't good for us either.
Excuse me, were they doing some custom stuff before they got out, or did they?
Yes, they were.
I thought they did. Okay.
Yes, they were, and they did a great job. I mean, they were a class company, and the merchandise or the product they put out was awesome. I mean, great attention to detail. But
it's just not easy to change your business plan in the middle of when you're a legacy company like that. It's hard to revert to doing custom stuff when you're already geared up for something else. I kind of look at, the same thing. I look at it with us and at the end, Amusement Business, because they were set up as a subscription based, mail to your house, pay for it thing.
Right.
We went on the internet and started, doing stories and doing things like that. It was free. So it changed, just like radio and TV and all the things that have changed, newspaper. It's just, it's hard to gear down, to somehow change your business plan like that and become, it's like you said, when you're a family business or you're new or whatever, you're lean and mean. And, we didn't have giant salaries for everybody and have a bunch of staff reporters. We had some people that were working on stories and on that kind of basis, but we were geared to be lean and mean. So that really helped us, in that sort of struggle when things were going on.
It makes a big difference because, with a corporation, you've got a board of directors and they're primarily looking at the figures and the numbers and the profit. And when profit starts to slip, well, what are we going to do about this? Well, it's so easy to get rid of people. It's so easy to get rid of processes. But that's not the best choice when it comes to growing a business. So, but that was a shock because they just quit. And I mean, it was IAPA November, and they said, we're done. And we're like, what? You're leaving an industry that brought you an awful lot, and that's kind of my take on it is, we're here. It's the Hotel California, you can check out, but you'll never leave. And we see it happening every day. And unfortunately, you have to experience it with the number of people that leave the industry. I just saw that Mark Cox, Red Cox's brother, passed away, and Terry Swear. And I'm like, man, I remember those guys. Oh man, those were some fun times. And I mean, I remember showing up on a lot at 2:00 in the morning to go over some canvas with Terry Swear. And I mean, man, you walk into that trailer and it's full of smoke and you're just like, are you in here? Those kind of things. But there's just a lot of really good stories with all those guys. None of them left. You don't leave the industry. You check out. And
that's why Anchor was so shocking, right? Because it does happen so rarely. I mean, I think in most businesses you say people come, people go, whatever. It's not a big deal. But for somebody to actually just voluntarily step out, it was like, kind of like a show owner retiring. Like I can think of only a couple of examples where guys, really retired and got out and that was it. Maybe, Dick Carl might have done that to a certain extent. And Danny Dell certainly did back in the day. And I was trying to think, I had one more in my brain a couple minutes ago. Oh, Frank Conklin is a great example, actually.
Yeah.
He sold and he's like, see you later. And he's playing with his grandkids and everything. But
yes, exactly. That how he pulled that off is amazing. I guess maybe he needs to write a book and maybe share that with us.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody wants to read that book because they don't want to give up. They like the idea of selling.
Yeah.
Just like with the whole name thing, there were a lot of show owners involved. But how many of them, were really checking out? And they still wanted to kind of be involved. They wanted to kind of get the money, but still kind of be running the company, in a way. So it's like...
We've experienced that. We've seen show owners step away and then step back in.
Yeah, big quotes on the air quotes on the step away.
Yeah, and
they
I'm
sell to their son, but all of a sudden they're in there.
Yes, exactly. And it's that's a tough piece of it, for myself. I'm not selling it to anybody. I only have one son, Cody, and he'll end up with it. So I don't need to sell it to him, and I'm just fine. Like I said, my wife and I got really smart early in our lives. So coming into the carnival business, I took a hell of a hit. I mean, it was a big hit financially, but since 2007, I can say I've never had a raise. At that point in 2007, Joe B gave me a raise, and I'm like, that's enough. That's enough. So when I bought it, I'm like, I'm not going to take a raise because this isn't about me. This is about you guys. I can survive, I do like peanut butter and jelly. I do like bologna sandwiches. I can live on that stuff. It's not, I don't need anything more. I can be happy with it,
But you got to invest in the inventory of the T-shirts.
Exactly.
Need a little extra money.
Got to rock the T-shirts. That's exactly right.
A broader point I want to make it just really came to me when you're talking about it before, but I think it's kind of important for the industry in a way, because I don't think, it's funny, you don't analyze it like our industry. You don't really, you see all these business analysts with all these other things, but ours, we don't look at it that way so much. But really there was the late 80s and early 90s, there was kind of a revolution in color in a way, or design or flash or wherever you want to do it. You described the canvas. I'm thinking of Gary Otterbacher with food trailers, when you had Shantz and they had, the white trailer with the red lettering, and that's like what every trailer looked like. And then all of a sudden Gary starts making these designs that were, incredible marquees and beautiful looks and doing that whole flash thing. So between you with the canvas and the trailers and the way they looked and the concessions, there was kind of a revolution there. And then the rides followed too with all their custom designs and looks and flash and things like that. So there was, sort of a revolution that went into the 90s and late 90s that probably started in the very late 80s or early 90s with the whole industry, really, in a lot of ways.
I almost think that was a generational thing. I don't know that you're going to find that until maybe Gen Z. I think they might be looking for what's next and what's new and how do we change things. Because we got through that part of it. Everybody was looking like, what else can we do? And Otterbacher built a hell of a trailer. And the only reason I say that as a canvas guy, we can make the same piece for trailer number 1 as trailer number 200, and it was going to fit. I mean, they were meticulous about building their trailers. And then Denny Bartosik too.
True. Yeah, Dennis was big.
He became a craftsman at it, and there's
the electronics he designed were incredible. Some of the things he did,
And Bob Space Racer, same thing. Mm-hmm. Man, it just became a bigger and bigger deal, and
they pushed each other.
And then you have these crazies like Joey Fowler, who takes his trailer and goes, I think I'm going to cut a hole in the ceiling, and then I want you to build me a tent to go on top of my trailer. And we're like, okay.
Joe, you're out of your mind.
Yeah. I'm like, that's insane. No, I'm just going to put a little ladder here. It'll drop down and I'll be able to go up. And I go, what are you thinking about that? He goes, well, 2 reasons. He goes, when we have a single operator on the midway and we run out of plush, they got to run to a trailer, grab a bag of plush, come running back with it. And we're down for 30 minutes sometimes, not making any money. So he said, I'm going to stuff the plush up in the ceiling underneath that tent. And so when they need plush, they can just go up there and grab it and pull it down and then, stock the trailer again. So he said, this way I'm not losing money, So I'm like, okay, that's really smart. And then number 2 was his guys were sleeping up there. That was their bunkhouse. It was Fowler's games and bunkhouses.
Joey's an interesting guy. He's so smart in those aspects and unassuming. You think like,
Yes.
is this guy really going to come up with a brilliant idea? But he's a smart builder. He's really, as far as engineering or whatever you want to call it, he's really, really smart when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there, and I think that was part of that whole 80s and 90s thing was he was obviously going to challenge his trailer manufacturers and his canvas people, and the carnivals were doing the same thing. They were challenging you to be better. You can take all the criticism in the world, but I tell you that these guys, and I think of Frank Zychek, made you better. It was a struggle, but they always made you better. And with like Bob Space Racer, Bob was as hard on you as he was great to you when things were good. So he would criticize if something's wrong, he'd blow a gasket. If something is right, he'd blow a gasket. So he was very fair that way, very balanced. And that guy, I think, taught us a lot too. He and Tony both.
I just interviewed Bob. Did you see that episode? It came out a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
It was a good episode.
Town or something, I think it was. Was it at Gibtown?
Down at Gibtown, yeah. That was one of the first live ones.
Yeah, that'd be hard to do.
Yeah, well, it was, but it was neat. I was so glad Bob was able to do it because we tried to get together before that, but he's running around the country doing horses or whatever he's doing, and he's tough to track down. So he said, "What the heck? We'll do it right here."
Yeah,
we did Patty Sullivan too there. I don't think that's out yet, but yeah.
Oh, awesome.
That was a neat interview too.
Yeah,
but you're right. Where they're really great. Frank Zychek, who you mentioned, is really a very good coach in a lot of ways. You're not going to get, believe me, if you're sensitive and you're looking for constant praise for everything you do, it's not a good environment for you because you're going to be in trouble. But like you said, when you do get that praise, you really did something. He's kind of the guy where now they don't get, he doesn't give participation trophies for sure, but if you win the championship, you get a nice trophy. That's the
right
thing with Frank is but then he's always on to the next thing. Like, and a lot of guys you say are that way, whether it's Ray Kamek shows or whoever else, they don't rest. They don't stop. They don't celebrate. They're always, I remember when I happened to be with him when he first got the New York State Fair, which is a huge, huge thing for him.
Oh,
It was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and he's sitting with his team, and we had a meeting with the fair, and it was great. And everybody's like, just celebrating. We're sitting there, and he took about 5 minutes to celebrate. Then he starts in on things they need to improve. It's like the other day I noticed that this thing and that thing, and I was like, wow, he's just right back in it. Just what's next, what's next, and it takes a special mindset to be able to do that all the time. It really does, because most people just want to go, oh, look what I did. Thank God, I'm gonna celebrate.
Yeah. Somehow all of that has kept him pretty young, because I realized, I'm like, man, I don't have the energy. I get to 2:00 or 3:00 in the afternoon, like, I'm tired.
Taking a nap.
I didn't used to be like that, man. When you work with me, when we went on the road, the deal with all of our employees was eat a good breakfast, because you're not going to eat the rest of the day. Because I didn't stop. We just went and went and went and went, because there was always so much to do and so much to learn, really, about the customer and the industry itself. But it's an amazing industry, and I think our success has really been the fact that we had people from the outside looking in and went, well, what if we do this? Or what if we try these colors? All of a sudden we're at 23, 24 different colors. And then the industry decides, well, I want my own colors. I want my own design, And one in particular, when Joe and I were in Arizona talking at Ray Kamek shows, and they wanted to do, which was really one of their first big makeovers. They wanted the entire carnival set and ready to rock at Houston Livestock Show. Again, that's a September kind of conversation, but Joe, Joe's a salesman. And so he's in the office and we've got everybody gathered there, and, Ray and, you got Guy Levitt, and Charlene and Attitude Annie, Annie Castle, and yeah, and Tony Fiore. I mean, it was that's such a room full of personality.
I love Tony.
But there's Joe's just like promising the world.
We can do that.
Yeah. And so Annie looked over and she goes, "Okay, Joe, you're telling us you can get all this done and this is going to be great and wonderful." But she says, "Your guy doesn't look so confident." And I said, "That's because his guy over here is thinking, I need to be back in the shop right now, having production meetings and scheduling meetings to figure out how in the heck we can get this done in that amount of time, because we don't have a design yet." They didn't even have a design. And so we're like, we got to work on a design. So we did. And it was one of those moments where you start to reflect, and I'm like, okay, I came up with the swirl design. And it was yellow in the middle and red on the outside, and it had a purple trim in it. And we started printing it out on triangles, and we taped the triangles together and went, wow, that's kind of a cool design. Maybe they'd like that one. And then we figured out how to make it look 3D and send them pictures and see if that was like it. And they were like, yeah, we love it. Okay, so that's what we're going for. Now you got to figure out how to take that design and how's that play into the games? How's it play into trailer canvas? How's it play into a big top for a Himalaya ride or whatever? So you got to work through all those things. And then later I was asked, so how'd you come up with that swirl design? And I was like, if you ever watch The Wizard of Oz, and when Dorothy lands and she starts her trek down the yellow brick road, I go, in the movie, it's the beginning of the yellow brick road. I go, there's a swirl, it's yellow, it's red, and it's purple, got a purple trim on it. And I go, it's exactly like the yellow brick road. And I said, because like Dorothy, I woke up on a carnival lot one day and went, what happened? And how the hell did I get here?
Where's Oz?
Yes. Follow the yellow brick road, man. And so that's what it was. It was the yellow brick road of entertainment, really, is what this industry is. But that's really where that first design came in. And I always tried to do something like that with each of the designs that we ever came up with. The Vavona brothers, there were the 5 Vavona brothers, and Amusements of America, red, white, and blue. And I always put 5 stars in every design. I mean, they're office canopies or trailer sets or whatever. At any exposure, you were only going to see 5 stars. And I just wanted each one of those to represent one of the brothers. Never told them about it. But to me, it was just like you could walk by and, well, then if, you know what, we weren't able to service them and somebody else made a piece of canvas for them. It was like, yeah, that's not one of ours. There's 6 stars or 8 stars or 2 stars, and I'm like, they're not exactly one of our products, but just a joy working with those guys too. I mean, we could spend hours and I could take you down to every single carnival out there, But
who'd you deal with on the Vavona with the Amusements of America?
Dom Senior.
Oh, Dominic. Okay.
Yeah. So my wife and I, when we purchased the company, I took her on a road tour. I said, we need to explain to people that Joe B isn't part of this anymore. And here's what's been going on and what has my role been, in building this company. And so they understand, and basically to make sure everybody still has confidence in the company and that sort of thing. So I took her with me. She was working for Eli Lilly at the time. So I took her to Coastal Carolina Fair, I think it was, and one of their last fairs of the year, probably. I love it.
It's the last.
Really cool fair. And so we went to that one, and we go in the office, and Dom Jr. and, well, everybody's there. So they pull everybody in the office, and my wife and I. And so we're basically explaining how things are working and so on and so forth, and what can we do for you. And Dom goes to my wife, he's like, Eli Lilly. He goes, don't you guys make that little blue pill? Yeah, they're talking
That's
about
what it-
Alice. Don't you make? She goes, yeah, we do make that. And he goes, how exactly does that work? And Dom Jr.'s like, Dad, seriously. And so these two now have their own conversation going over here about the medical industry.
The medical industry.
Work.
It's funny was that was his only interest in the medical industry was the
Yes, that was it. It was like, yeah, canvas, whatever. Canvas, schmanvas. It was like, tell me about this, little blue pill you've got called Cialis. It was hilarious. But then again, it's like, there's your family dynamic, you go in and you talk to family businesses because you're a family, and it makes that whole process a lot easier. But I mean, you talk about it, you could go story to story. Danny Houston, man, when I was first starting out, he had a couple games, floating around, I think, with Pew shows at the time.
Yeah.
And so I'd measure a couple things, and you know what? I had him checked out, man. We had canvas that fit for the first time, and he was excited about it. And then Joe B went out one time. Joe liked to go and remeasure everything. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here, so I'm going to grab a tape and I'm going to go remeasure it. Well, it didn't even have the same fasteners. It had nothing associated with it. So it put a dent in our relationship a little bit, but we managed to always get it back. But you think about where people started, and how things progressed, and manufacturers too. I mean, if you go deep enough, you'll probably discover that the manufacturers are all related to a farmer somewhere. I think the farmers in America were the original entrepreneurs because they had to make things and figure things out. Like, how do I not break my back doing this job? Let's design a piece of metal and call it a plow. And we'll use that. And we'll use a horse to drag it through instead of you trying to push it. Oh, yeah, look at that. No.
And they were brilliant about the way they designed things. They're just brilliant, the things they came up with.
And they were great.
Eli Bridge, when you hear that podcast, I guess their great grandfather, whoever founded the company, Sullivan he was a brilliant guy. He made a giant wheel like 1908, like a real giant wheel, like with tubs and everything else. It was unbelievable. I was like, holy mackerel, he's way ahead of his time. It was
absolutely. Absolutely. But that's the thing I discovered too about all these family businesses is they're all competitors, but they all work well together as an industry, because again, they're family businesses. But you just notice that some of them are steps ahead of the other ones in the terms of the way they operate their business. But sometimes that's because of the route. Maybe it lends itself to I can have more equipment, keep it looking better because I'm only hitting so many places. Independence. That's become a bigger deal. But you see today, what I'm excited about, in terms of leadership of this industry is I went to IAFA. I saw you at the IAFE. I went there just to nose around. I wanted to see Marla Kaliko. I wanted just to see her and tell her thank you for what she's done for IAFE as she was retiring. And man, I walked on the show floor and she was there, right in front of me. I'm like, hey, I wanted to say thank. And so we had a great conversation. We had met before, but you're like, what's going on, without stepping in, because I don't want to step back in, because we actually had 3 really good years since I've stayed in the background. We've had 3 really, really strong years, and it's better without me. And in the front side of it, because I'm too close to it, But anyway, so getting into there, I went to one of the seminars, and I believe it was related to safety on the Midway and the fact that, we've got kids and gangs that are kind of coming in, and social media just creates this giant of a mess. Kids can get together and go, hey, let's go disturb something. And how do we handle those things? And then also it was about temporary employment and that type of thing, and the H-2B, and how do we manage that? Well, it was led by Ben Pickett and Blake Houston and Andy Degler.
Oh, wow.
And I sat back in there and I listened to all the old school in the room and all the new school in the room. And one thing I can say about this industry is you need to be excited, because those kids, I'll call them, because they were kids when I first met them. I knew Ben's dad, Taz Pickett, major character. But these kids that have now grown up and are now taking leadership roles, they know what they're doing. They've got it. They understand it. And I think that presents a really big picture of the future of the amusement industry. I think it's going to be great based on just what I saw in that room and how they handled the crowd. They knew their audience, and you could just tell there was a great deal of respect between them all, and it was great to see. So it gives me confidence that I'll see our business continue as well, along those lines, because of the leadership that's out there today. It's amazing.
It is. There's a lot of great people out there really doing things. Some people say the industry might have lost some of its color. It's not as many characters or whatever as you want to say, but it's more corporate or whatever however you want to characterize it. But I don't know. There's certainly plenty of people and they do their thing. I think it's might be generational too, where people nothing was as good as when you were there. When you did your thing. So.
Well, I think my attitude has always been let success be the fallout of having a good time, and when you talk about amusement, it is one of the last bastions in the world where families can go and be entertained and enjoy themselves and take a minute and have some fun. You can't go to a movie theater with a family. I'll go to this one, you go to that one. I'll see you after the movie, but it's a drawing place. And what I come to know is that people want to be entertained.
It's true. And it is a good feeling too. Like when I first got in the industry, I was doing fundraising for a nonprofit, and I had to do all these different events, and it's always a pain in the neck because people don't want to sell, pencils that they don't need and things like that. But I did a carnival once, or I remembered my church used to do one in New Jersey, and we'd raise a ton of money. And the great thing was people were happy to give you the money, like it was just a byproduct of doing good and having a good time. And it was great, So when you think about, the fire trucks they buy or the money they raise for this, that, or the other thing, it's amazing the amount of money that our industry raises to do a lot of good, because a lot of the money does do some pretty good things. I'm sure it does some not so good things too, but it does some great things.
It does. There's no doubt about it. I'd say the organizations that are out there with the different state organizations, and then you've got IAFE and you've got OABA, and all of those organizations are striving for a common goal, which is good. And I know years back there was a rift between, the carnivals and IAFA, and everybody booked out of IAFA. And
they showed them.
Yes. And so, but that's
we're not going to talk to our clients anymore. Did you boycott all your carnival clients one year too because you were mad at them?
What's that?
Didn't you boycott all your carnival clients because you were mad at them one year? You said, I'm not going to talk to them anymore. I'll show them.
Yeah, I'll show them.
Make cameras for the local
there was
schools.
just some attitudes in the room that needed to be changed, and it happened,
No, I'm glad they worked it out. And I'm glad Gibtown and the OABA worked it out this year too, because that was a shame too. Things going on. We're too small to get in fights like that. It's just crazy.
It is, because we don't want anything different. Everyone wants to attain the same thing, And if the goal is to continue to entertain your customers, present them something new every year, keep them interested in what you have to offer, that's where the real success, I think, starts to comes from.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Well, in our minute we have left, so you're still involved with the company? You're still working? I know Cody's doing the lion's share. And
You wouldn't
but
find me in the office. I
you're
stay
not going
out
to
of
disappear off the face of the earth one day, though.
No, that's not going to happen. But I don't take phone calls. I don't do any direct.
So if Frank Zajac calls you, you don't take his call. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Frank Zajac has. We've educated ourselves not to have him call me because we're kind of going through the same thing.
Sure.
And the same thing is we have to preserve the future of the company, and this isn't the face of the future. Nothing about this says future. It says past. It says knowledge. It says made a lot of mistakes. Here's what I learned from them. These are the things I can help you with.
So we got to look at Cody's face. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, you got to look at Cody's face as the future. My grandsons, I've got 3 grandsons coming up. There's a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they'll be popping in, I'm sure.
Nice.
Or they may choose not to, but I kind of think they would have an aptitude for it.
That's great.
As a matter of fact, I've got one grandson. I drew a chart out for Cody, and I said, "Here's what I see for the future if they decide to get in." He goes, "Well, you got the youngest one retiring before the oldest one." And I said, "Well, the youngest one's not going to school." I go, "He won't go to college." I don't see it for him. I don't think he's going to do that. He's going to hop right into the company, and he'll be more involved quicker.
We can't wait to see what happens with Waterloo. We can't wait to see if you really step back that much or not, but hopefully not. Hopefully we'll see a lot.
I can tell you one thing. Frank has, in the last 3 years, had his 3 biggest years with Waterloo Tent. And that's saying something because I didn't have an involvement in one order. I wasn't in there going, "Hey, get this done. Come in Sunday," that kind of thing. It wasn't me doing it. So it's working. The thing that I learned is with grandkids is one thing. And I'll share that with you, and then I can be done. But my son Cody, we had this glass table in our house, and my son Cody would crawl under that table as an infant, and he'd raise his head up and bang his head, bang his head, bang his head a third time, and I'd grab him by the ankles and pull him out, and away he goes. My grandson comes over, boom, gets under the same damn table, bam, hits his head, bam, hits his head. And I sit back in my easy chair now because I'm a grandpa. And I'm looking at him going, how many times is he going to hit his head before he figures this out, that there's a glass table there? And pretty soon he flips over and he sees the glass and he pushes himself out and he goes on his way. And I'm like, he's so much further ahead in life right now than my son was at that point. Because I set the direction for him, and the grandson figured it out. And so that's the hard part for show owners, business owners, is it's hard to watch your kids grow up, but it's harder to let them grow up. And in business, you can kind of see the train wrecks coming around the corner. You want to step in and you want to stop it, but that's the way I learned. It's that business tuition, and you got to let them experiment. You got to let them have those failures, which are only lessons in life. And if you can,
so they can continue to walk.
Do that, that company is going to continue and it'll succeed. But it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult transition to let them grow up.
Well, Pete, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm glad to hear in your spare time you'll be joining the podcast much more often since you have lots of time off. And
this is fun.
How those T-shirt sales are going?
Yeah. We'll keep you abreast of those T-shirt sales.
Thanks so much for coming on.
0 right now. But if anybody would like one,
call Pete now. He does answer those calls. Right. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it was a good time, man. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you.
This podcast is brought to you by Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Our staff of professionals can guide you through your setup, assist with customer service, even on the weekends when you most need it, and help increase your sales through promotions that work. Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Sign up today at innovativeticketing.com.